this whole idea of it being unjust, I think it reveals a couple of possible misunderstandings. Paul Murray on YouTube, how is it just for Christ to take our place? An atheist friend sees this as being incredibly unjust, especially given God is supposed to be perfectly just.
Well, Paul unpacks this clearly in Romans 3:26 when he says, so as to be just and the justifier, the one who has faith in Jesus, Christ died for our sins. Christ wasn't forced to the cross. Christ voluntarily went to the cross. And this, I want to hear your insights on this, Alisa, because this goes right to the denial of the atonement. These people are trying to say, oh, it's unjust for God to punish Jesus in our place. Not if Jesus takes our punishment on himself. A story I often tell when I go to a college campus is the story of Michael Monsoor, the United States Navy SEAL, who was on a roof in Ramadi on September 29th, 2006, and he had two Navy SEALs lying in the sniper-prone position next to him when an insurgent threw a grenade up on the roof, and it hit Monsoor in the chest, and it fell to his feet. He had only a split second to make a decision. There was a doorway behind him that he could have leapt through and saved himself. But instead of that, he yelled grenade, and then he dove on the grenade that was right next to his two teammates. It detonated. 30 minutes later, Michael Monsoor was dead, and his two teammates receive only minor injuries because Monsoor's body muffled the blast. In fact, one of the survivors said at Monsoor's funeral, he said, Mikey looked death in the face that day and said, you will not take my friends, I will go in their stead. And I've never seen a United States president cry until April of 2008. That's when President George W. Bush invited Monsoor's parents into the East Room of the White House to give them their son's Medal of Honor posthumously, because Monsoor gave up his life to save his friends. He wasn't forced to do it. Nobody would have blamed him if he had leapt through the doorway and saved himself, but he did it. And then in 2019, the United States Navy commissioned the USS Michael Monsoor, a guided missile destroyer out of San Diego, where he was from. Mm. And nobody says that Monsoor was unjust for diving on the grenade. Everybody hails him as a hero, rightfully so, because he gave up his life to save others. Mm-hmm. Well, that's what Jesus did, except the only difference is Jesus didn't dive on a grenade to save just his friends. He dove on a grenade to save his enemies. Yeah. Nobody does that, right?
Yeah. This whole idea of it being unjust, I think it reveals a couple of possible misunderstandings. It would only be unjust if Jesus were an unwilling victim, or if it was something that was happening to him that he had no power or control over. But I think a robust understanding of the Trinity settles this. In Christian theology, God is one being in three persons. And God is justice. Like you mentioned before, he's not composed of parts. He's not like a pie where he's got like a justice piece and a love piece and other attributes like are all pieces of the pie. He is one, he is fully just, fully good, fully love. And we only know what those words mean because they're based on his nature and character. So his love and his justice are not two parts of the same being. They are fully integrated. They're literally the same thing. And so in his justice, it says that in the Old Testament, his revealed word coming from justice itself is that there's no forgiveness for sins without the shedding of blood. And so God, instead of getting some sort of hapless victim that had no power or control over the thing, he doesn't do that, actually. In fact, he says, I'll do it. And then we have the incarnation, God in flesh, Jesus living that life that none of us could have lived, that sinless life, and then taking our sins upon himself. And he himself said that's what he was doing in the upper room the night before he was betrayed in Luke 22. We have that famous scene we all remember where he institutes communion with the bread and the wine, but later that night, he refers to Isaiah 53. Now, if anyone's unfamiliar with the prophecy of Isaiah 53, it's a prophecy that was hundreds of years before Jesus. It was about what theologians call this suffering servant. And whoever this person was, they were going to be taking the sins of the world. It would please the Lord to crush him. It was the will of the Lord to crush him. He has put him to grief, it says in Isaiah 53. And the Lord has laid on him the sins of us all. And there's punishment language in Isaiah 53. There is payment language in Isaiah 53. And Jesus identifies himself as the suffering servant from Isaiah 53. And he does this in Luke 22. And so when I think about this whole claim that it's unjust for Jesus to stand in our place, it's really the only just option, unless you take the wrath of God for yourself. That would be just. But God says, you know what, I'm going to do it instead. And I think that how Jesus would respond to the charge of it being unjust or cosmic child abuse or something like that, there's a scene where Jesus predicts his death and his resurrection, and Peter opposes him. And he's basically like, no, we're not going to do that, not that. And Jesus, what does he say? He says, "Get behind me, Satan, for you have your mind on the things of earth and not on things of heaven or of the Lord." I don't have it right in front of me. But I think that's what Jesus would say when we say, well, it's unjust. He would say, you have your mind on things on earth. You don't have your mind on heavenly things if that's what you think. And so justice himself would say, no, it's not unjust.